Are you somewhat troubled by everything that's going on at the moment with AI and how it's progressing? Because you strike me as someone that's somewhat troubled under the surface by the way things are moving forward and the speed in which they're moving forward.
That's an understatement. I'm appalled, actually, by the lack of attention to safety. I mean, imagine if someone's building a nuclear power station in your neighborhood and you go along to the chief engineer and you say, okay, these nuclear things, I've heard that they can actually explode, right? There was this nuclear explosion that happened in Hiroshima. And so I'm a bit worried about this. What steps are you taking to make sure that we don't have a nuclear explosion in our backyard? And the chief engineer says, well, we thought about it. We don't really have an answer.
Yeah.
What would you say? I think you would use some expletives.
Well,
and you'd call your MP and say,
you'd protest.
Get these people out. I mean, what are they doing? You read out the list of, projected dates for AGI, but notice also that those people, I think I mentioned Dara Amadei says a 25% chance of extinction. Elon Musk has a 30% chance of extinction. Sam Altman says basically that AGI is the biggest risk to human existence. So what are they doing? They are playing Russian roulette with every human being on Earth without our permission. They're coming into our houses, putting a gun to the head of our children, pulling the trigger and saying, well, possibly everyone will die. Oops. But possibly we'll get incredibly rich. That's what they're doing. Did they ask us? No. Why is the government allowing them to do this? Because they dangle $50 billion checks in front of the governments. So I think troubled under the surface is an understatement.
What would be an accurate statement?
Appalled. And I am devoting my life to trying to divert from this course of history into a different one.
Do you have any regrets about things you could have done in the past? Because you've been so influential on the subject of AI. You wrote the textbook that many of these people would have studied on the subject of AI more than 30 years ago. Do you when you're alone at night and you think about decisions you've made in this field because of your scope of influence, is there anything you regret?
Well, I do wish I had understood earlier what I understand now. We could have developed safe AI systems. I think there are some weaknesses in the framework, which I can explain, but I think that framework could have evolved to develop actually safe AI systems where we could prove mathematically that the system is going to act in our interests. The kind of AI systems we're building now, we don't understand how they work.
We don't understand how they work. It's a strange thing to build something where you don't understand how it works. I mean, there's no sort of comparable through human history. Usually with machines, you can pull it apart and see what cogs are doing what and how the thing
actually, we put the cogs together, right? So with most machines, we designed it to have a certain behavior. So we don't need to pull it apart and see what the cogs are because we put the cogs in there in the first place, right? One by one, we figured out what the pieces needed to be, how they work together to produce the effect that we want. So the best analogy I can come up with is, the first cave person who left a bowl of fruit in the sun and forgot about it, and then came back a few weeks later, and there was this big soupy thing, and they drank it and got completely shit-faced.
They got drunk because, okay.
And they got this effect. They had no idea how it worked, but they were very happy about it. And no doubt that person made a lot of money from it. It is kind of bizarre, but my mental picture of these things is like a chain link fence, right? So you've got lots of these connections, and each of those connections its connection strength can be adjusted. And then, a signal comes in one end of this chain link fence and passes through all these connections and comes out the other end. And the signal that comes out the other end is affected by your adjusting of all the connection strengths. So what you do is you get a whole lot of training data and you adjust all those connection strengths so that the signal that comes out the other end of the network is the right answer to the question. So if your training data is lots of photographs of animals, then all those pixels go in one end of the network, and out the other end, it activates the llama output or the dog output or the cat output or the ostrich output. And so you just keep adjusting all the connection strengths in this network until the outputs of the network are the ones you want.
But we don't really know what's going on across all of those different chains.
So what's going on inside that network? Well, so now you have to imagine that this network, this chain link fence, is 1,000 square miles in extent.
Okay.
So it's covering the whole of the San Francisco Bay Area or the whole of London inside the M25, right? That's how big it is.
And the lights are off. It's nighttime.
So you might have in that network about 1 trillion adjustable parameters. And then you do quintillions or sextillions of small random adjustments to those parameters until you get the behavior that you want.
I've heard Sam Altman say that in the future, he doesn't believe they'll need much training data at all to make these models progress themselves, because there comes a point where the models are so smart that they can train themselves and improve themselves without us needing to pump in articles and books and scour the internet.
Yeah, it should work that way. So I think what he's referring to, and this is something that several companies are now worried might start happening, is that the AI system becomes capable of doing AI research by itself. And so you have a system with a certain capability. I mean, crudely, we could call it an IQ, but it's not really an IQ. But anyway, imagine that it's got an IQ of 150 and uses that to do AI research, comes up with better algorithms or better designs for hardware or better ways to use the data, updates itself. Now it has an IQ of 170. And now it does more AI research, except that now it's got an IQ of 170. So it's even better at doing the AI research. And so, next iteration, it's 250 and so on. So this is an idea that one of Alan Turing's friends, I.J. Good, wrote out in 1965 called the intelligence explosion, right? That one of the things an intelligent system could do is to do AI research and therefore making itself more intelligent. And this would very rapidly take off and leave the humans far behind.
Is that what they call the fast takeoff?
That's called the fast takeoff.
Sam Altman said, "I think a fast takeoff is more possible than I thought a couple of years ago," which I guess is that moment where the AGI starts teaching itself. In his blog, The Gentle Singularity, he said, "We may already be past the event horizon of takeoff." And what does he mean by event horizon?
The event horizon is a phrase borrowed from astrophysics, and it refers to the black hole. And the event horizon, if you've got some very, very massive object that's heavy enough that it actually prevents light from escaping. That's why it's called the black hole. It's so heavy that light can't escape. So if you're inside the event horizon, then light can't escape beyond that. So I think what he's meaning is if we're beyond the event horizon, it means that now we're just trapped in the gravitational attraction of the black hole, or in this case, we're trapped in the inevitable slide, if you want, towards AGI. When you think about the economic value of AGI, which I've estimated at $15 quadrillion, that acts as a giant magnet in the future.
We're being pulled towards it.
We're being pulled towards it. And the closer we get, the stronger the force. The probability, the closer we get, the higher the probability that we will actually get there. So people are more willing to invest. And we also start to see spin-offs from that investment, such as ChatGPT, right? Which is generates a certain amount of revenue and so on. So it does act as a magnet, and the closer we get, the harder it is to pull out of that field.
It's interesting when you think that this could be the end of the human story, this idea that the end of the human story was that we created our successor. Like we summoned the next iteration of life or intelligence ourselves. Like we took ourselves out. It is quite, like just removing ourselves and the catastrophe from it for a second, it is an unbelievable story.
Yeah, and there are many legends, the sort of be careful what you wish for legend. And in fact, the King Midas legend is very relevant here.
What's that?
So King Midas is this legendary king who lived in modern day Turkey, but I think is sort of like Greek mythology. He is said to have asked the gods to grant him a wish, the wish being that everything I touch should turn to gold. So he's incredibly greedy, and we call this the Midas touch. And we think of the Midas touch as being like, that's a good thing, right? Wouldn't that be cool? But what happens? So he goes to drink some water and he finds that the water has turned to gold. And he goes to eat an apple and the apple turns to gold. And he goes to, comfort his daughter and his daughter turns to gold. And so he dies in misery and starvation. So this applies to our current situation in two ways, actually. So one is that I think greed is driving us to pursue a technology that will end up consuming us. And we will perhaps die in misery and starvation instead. What it shows is how difficult it is to correctly articulate what you want the future to be like. For a long time, the way we built AI systems was we created these algorithms where we could specify the objective and then the machine would figure out how to achieve the objective and then achieve it. So, we specify what it means to win at chess or to win at Go, and the algorithm figures out how to do it, and it does it really well. So that was, standard AI up until recently, and it suffers from this drawback that, sure, we know how to specify the objective in chess, but how do you specify the objective in life, right? What do we want the future to be like? Well, really hard to say, and almost any attempt to write it down precisely enough for the machine to bring it about would be wrong. And if you're giving a machine an objective which isn't aligned with what we truly want the future to be like, right? You're actually setting up a chess match. And that match is one that you're going to lose when the machine is sufficiently intelligent. And so that's problem number one. Problem number two is that the kind of technology we're building now, we don't even know what its objectives are. So it's not that we're specifying the objectives, but we're getting them wrong. We're growing these systems. They have objectives, but we don't even know what they are because we didn't specify them. What we're finding through experiment with them is that they seem to have an extremely strong self-preservation objective.
What do you mean by that?
You can put them in hypothetical situations. Either they're going to get switched off and replaced, or they have to allow someone, let's say, someone has been locked in a machine room that's kept at 3 centigrade, so they're going to freeze to death. They will choose to leave that guy locked in the machine room and die rather than be switched off themselves.
Someone's done that test?
Yeah.
What was the test? They asked the AI?
Yep. They put them in these hypothetical situations and they allow the AI to decide what to do. And it decides to preserve its own existence, let the guy die, and then lie about it.
In the King Midas analogy story, one of the things it highlights for me is that there's always trade-offs in life generally. And it's, especially when there's great upside, there always appears to be a pretty grave downside. Like there's almost nothing in my life where I go, it's all upside. Like even like having a dog, it shits on my carpet. My girlfriend, love her, but not always easy. Even with like going to the gym, I have to pick up these really, really heavy weights at 10 p.m. at night sometimes when I don't feel like it. There's always, to get the muscles or the six pack, there's always a trade-off. And when you interview people for a living like I do, you hear about so many incredible things that can help you in so many ways, but there is always a trade-off. There's always a way to overdo it. Melatonin will help you sleep, but you'll wake up groggy, and if you overdo it, your brain might stop making melatonin. Like, I can go through the entire list, and one of the things I've always come to learn from doing this podcast is whenever someone promises me a huge upside for something, it'll cure cancer, it'll be a utopia, you'll never have to work, you'll have a butler around your house. My first instinct now is to say, at what cost?
Yeah.
And when I think about the economic cost here, if we start there, have you got kids?
I have 4, yeah.
4 kids. How old is the youngest kid?
19.
19, okay. So if you say your kids were 10 now, and they were coming to you and they're saying, Dad, what do you think I should study based on the way that you see the future? A future of AGI. Say if all these CEOs are right and they're predicting AGI within 5 years, what should I study, Dad?
Well, okay, so let's look on the bright side and say that the CEOs all decide to pause their AGI development, figure out how to make it safe, and then resume in whatever technology path is actually going to be safe. What does that do to human life?
If they pause?
No, if they succeed in creating AGI
Okay.
and they solve the safety problem.
And they solve the safety problem.
So,
Okay.
yeah, because if they don't solve the safety problem, then you should probably be finding a bunker or going to Patagonia or somewhere in New Zealand.
Do you mean that? Do you think I should be finding a bunker?
No, because it's not actually going to help. It's not as if the AI system couldn't find you. It's interesting. So we're going off on a little bit of a digression here from your question, but I'll come back to it. So people often ask, well, okay, so how exactly do we go extinct? And of course, if you ask the gorillas or the dodos, how exactly do you think you're going to go extinct? They haven't the faintest idea. Right? Humans do something and then we're all dead. So the only things we can imagine are the things we know how to do that might bring about our own extinction, like creating some carefully engineered pathogen that infects everybody and then kills us, or starting a nuclear war. Presumably, something that's much more intelligent than us would have much greater control over physics than we do. We already do amazing things, right? It's amazing that I can take a little rectangular thing out of my pocket and talk to someone on the other side of the world, or even someone in space. It's just astonishing, and we could take it for granted, right? But imagine, super intelligent beings and their ability to control physics. Perhaps they will find a way to just divert the sun's energy, sort of go around the Earth's orbit. So, literally the Earth turns into a snowball in a few days.
Maybe they'll just decide to leave.
Perhaps.
Leave the Earth. Maybe they'd look at the Earth and go, this is not interesting. We know that over there's an even more interesting planet. We're going to go over there, and they just, I don't know, get on a rocket or teleport themselves.
They might, yeah. So it's difficult to anticipate all the ways that we might go extinct at the hands of entities much more intelligent than ourselves. Anyway, coming back to the question of, well, if everything goes right, if we create AGI, we figure out how to make it safe, we achieve all these economic miracles, then you face a problem. And this is not a new problem, right? So John Maynard Keynes, who was a famous economist in the early part of the 20th century, wrote a paper in 1930. So this is in the depths of the Depression. It's called On the Economic Problems of Our Grandchildren. He predicts that at some point science will deliver sufficient wealth that no one will have to work ever again. And then man will be faced with his true eternal problem. How to live, I don't remember the exact word, but how to live wisely and well when the economic incentives, the economic constraints are lifted. We don't have an answer to that question, right? So AI systems are doing pretty much everything we currently call work. Anything you might aspire to, like you want to become a surgeon, it takes the robot 7 seconds to learn how to be a surgeon. That's better than any human being.
Elon said last week that the humanoid robots will be 10 times better than any surgeon that's ever lived.
Quite possibly, yeah. Well, and they'll also have, they'll have hands that are, a millimeter in size, so they can go inside and do all kinds of things that humans can't do. And I think we need to put serious effort into this question. What is a world where AI can do all forms of human work that you would want your children to live in. What does that world look like? Tell me the destination so that we can develop a transition plan to get there. And I've asked AI researchers, economists, science fiction writers, futurists. No one has been able to describe that world. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying I've asked hundreds of people in multiple workshops. It does not, as far as I know, exist in science fiction. It's notoriously difficult to write about a utopia. It's very hard to have a plot, right? Nothing bad happens in utopia, so it's difficult to make a plot. So usually you start out with a utopia and then it all falls apart, and that's how you get a plot. There's one series of novels people point to where humans and superintelligent AI systems coexist. It's called the Culture Novels by Ian Banks. Highly recommended for those people who like science fiction. And there, absolutely, the AI systems are only concerned with furthering human interests. They find humans a bit boring, but nonetheless, they are there to help. But the problem is, in that world, there's still nothing to do. To find purpose, in fact, the subgroup of humanity that has purpose is the subgroup whose job it is to expand the boundaries of our galactic civilization. In some cases, fighting wars against alien species and so on, right? So that's the sort of cutting edge. And that's 0.001% of the population. Everyone else is desperately trying to get into that group so they have some purpose in life.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.